Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Here, we answer your questions on media and production 7 days a week. And, of course, you can get this question into us via Makana. If you're not in Makana yet, you can go to officehours.global/join. And if you register there, then all of a sudden you can get that email and you'll be get all the links to be on the inside track. If you're not in Makana, that's okay. You can also get questions into us at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and that's open 24/7. So if that question pops into your head, all you got to do is say name, question, and then we'll get it into the next couple shows. All that said, why don't we get into the first question, Alexander?
I just want to make sure you're still going to be there when we get back. It sounded like there was a bomb that was about to go off, and we just want to make sure you defuse it. That's all I'm saying, CJ. We just want to make sure you defuse the bomb. It's okay. The bomb's gone. Okay, because it sounded
the
like
green wire. The green wire.
The green wire. Cut the green wire. Cut the green wire.
No, it's the red wire.
Or is it the blue wire? Do a good job. Do a good job. While CJ's working on that, let's go ahead and jump into the first question.
First question is not from Jack Bauer. It's from the QR code from Mary Ellie Jusha, Miera, and Wablo. What were the microphones and earphones being used for the people at the DNC desks for the networks? CNN and MSNBC had black ones, but Newsmax, Fox, and OAN had white ones. They all sounded very different. Why?
Well, so what I would say is do send us a link for those kinds of questions, because I know that it may seem like we all watch a lot of TV. I've actually never seen a convention. I've worked 2 of them, and I've worked lots of stages from those things, but I've never actually sat down and watched a convention, ever, in my whole life. So I have no idea what they were wearing or how they were wearing it. I kind of find it to be a lot of pomp and circumstance that have nothing to do with protein. So I don't actually watch them. So I wouldn't know. So I mean, literally, you'd have to pay me to watch it. That's what people have done. But I haven't actually seen it. So my guess, though, is as you look at those mics, people make different decisions. They've made decisions over the quality of what they want it to sound like, what's available sometimes, unfortunately, and then also, how much noise reduction is there. Then it is all based on the systems, and every one of these is different. They're not run by the DNC; they're run by each one of those broadcasters. But identifying those, you probably have to give us a link to look at. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code from Michael Reyes in McLean, Virginia. Don't mean to bring politics into the show, but with the DNC convention being over, I was very impressed with the technical aspects of the show. How many production pros does it take to pull this off, especially the roll call segment, handling so many mics?
Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday. I was really impressed with the roll call. We're going to stay away from the politics of anything, but this was to me a big technical challenge, and I was very impressed with how they pulled it off, because for the anchors and the people who are commentating, typically they're behind glass in a booth, right? I think they were up and to the left. I wasn't watching it until that roll call. My wife, I mentioned the other day, said, "You got to come see this because it's really working well." What they managed to do was bring kind of a disco environment to the roll call. And I say that because they had a live DJ on stage playing various cuts for each state that came by. The motivation in there of people dancing and shouting and being into it was very much like a nightclub performance. And that means it was loud in the hall. And whenever you have loud content and you've got people speaking from the floors on microphones into that loud environment, you have all sorts of chances for disasters to happen with your audio chain. And I thought they managed it really well. I understand that from the little piece of it that I saw, that on each pole, on each table in the audience, there was what they called the bat phone. It was an old-fashioned hardwired phone. And they were using that to let the delegations from the different states understand when they were going live and how much time they had left and things like that. There was a coordinator dealing with all of that. The bottom line was everybody kind of knew when they were speaking, and in the flow of the music and the dancing and the partying, when it was time for the delegation from, pick a random state, from Ohio to speak, They got the kind of focus of everything. They were able to be heard clearly on the microphones they were using. Mostly it was handheld. They were able to pass it around to other people there and effectively get the communication done in that very loud environment that is usually hard. So that was one of the first things I noticed. Just hats off to the live sound team, the broadcast sound team, the DNC coordinating team for pulling it off so that I was able to hear at least every word clearly from pretty much everything. Only one little tiny mistake that I noticed, Kenan Thompson did a shtick, and they didn't unmute his mic, so he lost his first little live remote gag. That was coming from the outside. He was fine. So flawless, no, but incredibly well done for such a complex event.
Quick update, there's nothing to diffuse. But if you couldn't tell, I'm in a different space this morning. And while I was shuffling things around getting ready for today, apparently the clock that used to be in the background of my shot has an alarm function that I didn't know about. And I didn't know if it was me or if it was somebody on the back end trying to play a prank on me to see how well I could read with a distraction. So anyway, that's all my bad. Sorry about that. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Meta to unveil new smart glasses this year after Threads Post outs its AR frames. When is it time to pull the plug on AI AR glasses?
Go ahead, Jesse.
So my neighbor works on fairly large films in the camera department, and he just got back from shooting the new Tron film. And I asked him naively if they were shooting this one in 3D, and he just laughed at me. I say this to illustrate the fact that these are self-pulling plugs. They've pulled themselves. I mean, you walk down the street, you don't see people with AR, VR glasses. I'm watching Apple. If they can pull it off, if they can integrate this into people's daily lives, then they're the company that I believe could possibly do it. But these plugs pull themselves.
Alex?
Yeah, I will say that most of the 3D that we've seen is not very good because it wasn't really shot as 3D. They do a lot of post-production to do those. They cut them out and put them on cards and do a lot of depth maps and so on and so forth. And most people don't like those because they don't look very good. I'm in the middle of some 3D tests right now. When you have two cameras, I was doing some work with Radiant Images, and when you have two cameras that you have control of interaxial and convergence and all the other bits and pieces, the results are pretty amazing. It's just that we don't shoot that much. Avatar shoots that way, but almost nothing else does. And so we don't really know what 3D looks like because you don't get to see it very often in actual 3D. So I think that's part of it. I don't know if I need it to be in my daily life. I mean, I have an Apple Vision Pro. I don't walk around the streets with my Apple Vision Pro, but I can tell you at this point, if I'm not going to watch a movie with my family, I'm going to put my Vision Pro on because it is twice as good as my screen. And it's actually marginally better than going to the theater. It is literally a better experience for me than going to a theater at this point. For whatever reason with my eyesight, it's clearer in my Apple Vision Pro than it would be for me to go to the theater by a long shot. And so I think that there are reasons for that these to work. I think the other thing that we've had trouble with is delivering content. So generally, and I can tell you even with the stuff that we're doing recently, it's a little bit of an art project. It's very complicated to shoot the footage. It's very complicated to create the footage. It's a process. With the partnership between Apple and Blackmagic, if it comes to fruition, I mean, if that camera comes out, and if Apple's announcing it, it must be closer than we think because Apple wouldn't put it into an announcement not thinking it was going to come out. You're talking about dual 8K per eye, 90 frames a second. I can tell you, if you have a camera that just shoots that, you don't have to do anything crazy. You just plug it in and it shoots that footage. You get a lot of footage, of that. And I think people are going to be pretty impressed by what they see. I mean, I've seen footage that's in that realm, and it's a different experience, and it is, and all you want to do is watch that experience. But right now, up until now, it's been impossible to watch at that frame rate, at that resolution. So I think that there's if that camera comes to fruition and it's there, I think you're going to see a lot of content and then a lot more pressure to do it. I find the Apple Vision Pro is doing better because there's a whole environment, not doing better, but not selling more, but there's a whole environment and you're checking your email and looking at messages and doing all those other things that you do on your Mac. And that makes it a lot easier to use. I think that the hard part I have a Quest 2 or 3, I'm not sure which one, which I do like as well. but I only use it when I'm going to, I use it to go do something, usually supernatural. And that's all I use it for. And then I put it away, and so I think that environment is a big piece of it. As far as the AR frames, I'm not as excited about those. I do have the XR ones, although I gave them to my son. He thinks they're great. But I think that we will do more of this most likely than less.
Good guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing the future here with my grandkids here. We have the Quest 2 and the 3, and when they visit, they're on those things, and they're running around, they're talking to their friends, they're in their own little world, and then they'll accidentally hit something like their hand on a piece of furniture, and it's kind of funny to hear them just in pain. But yeah, after seeing the Vision Pro, you'll know where the future is going with the clarity. Because I picked up the Quest for $500 at Costco. Now think about this: Meta has sold 20 million Quest units. 20 million, and they're one of the biggest companies in the world. So this stuff's not going away. I do have the little frames from the XR Airs, the original ones, and that resolution is going to get better and better. Seeing the resolution of the Vision Pro, and now seeing Canon come out with the R5C2 and the lenses, and it's a whole nother world. So being able to visit other places and go other places with these, just being able to toss these on, and then having multiple monitors that you can put up and move around, and then the spatial characteristics of spatial photos, it's pretty amazing. I mean, having high-speed bandwidth here and being able to download like the Grand Canyon 650 megs in a couple seconds on a high-speed connection and look around, you're teleporting all over the world. It's coming. Like everybody just hasn't seen it. I got to get a taste of it here just because I got to play with the Vision Pro. If you haven't gone to the Apple demo, go do it. It'll blow your mind. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is that, when there's a lot of, as soon as I saw 320 by 240 on a Mac, I was like, this is, film is going to be gone in 20 years. It was about 20 years from then on. So from when I saw it to when it happened, but when a lot of people saw 320 by 240 and was like, well, I don't know what you're going to do with that, but you could easily see a trajectory where this gets a lot bigger, and, and it all kind of passes. And at this point, I mean, film is done by people who are, artsy, when they shoot film, but it's not a real production pipeline anymore, And so we have to remember that when we look at where we are now, that you have to, if you look at that front side trajectory, I think that there's a lot of, and I will say that if you travel a lot, I mean, the Vision Pro is transformational on a plane. Like, just, I don't have any way to say it any shorter than that. I put it on. The last time I flew from LA, they tapped me on the shoulder, and when I took my headset off, the plane was empty. I had lost track. I was like, they were like, you gotta go, and I was like, oops, sorry. So I had lost track because I got the headset on, I got the thing on, I just completely somewhere else, and so but the flights go like that, and at that price, I don't know if it'd be worth it if I didn't fly a lot, but if you fly a lot, if you do, I used to do 250,000 miles a year, it would have been worth it just for the flights, so.
And, it's one of those things that's interesting where there is a certain social stigma to when you're wearing something in public, even on a plane. Like, I have the X-Real glasses that I bought prior to the Vision Pro because I was trying to get into it. And this morning, I dropped my wife off at the airport early, and I said, hey, I've got these glasses. Do you want them? You can watch a movie on the plane. And she's like, do I have to have that wire kind of going down the side? She's like, no, I'm okay. Meanwhile, I'm looking like a cyborg with the Vision on gate to gate, kind of the same thing that Alex was saying. And you're like, oh, wow, this is a whole different experience. And so the convergence between that lighter form factor and having something like the Vision that is so immersive and has the quality so high. I mean, that's if you're trying to look into the crystal ball and look into the future, that's going to be a really magical place. And I think, even though, I think Snapchat has AR glasses, and that's when Meta pushed their announcement early because Snapchat put theirs out, and you're like, what are you doing? This seems silly, but, there is a future where these could be pretty transformational. Next question.
Next question is from Dan Halliburton in Dallas, Texas. What advice would you give speakers at a large arena event like the DNC that would make them powerful but not screaming? Could the sound crew use some technology to help make the speakers sound better?
Jesse?
For me, it's usually compression and limiting that push a normal voice into the range that feels abrasive and aggressive on the ears. So if we're talking strictly technology, I'd say compression and limiting is where you want to be really, really, really sensitive. And the reality is, like, on this panel, we get enthusiastic sometimes, and we're not in front of thousands of people who are screaming at us. When the adrenaline kicks in, you're going to go big on a stage like that.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, folks that don't do it very often, as Jesse said, will oftentimes the adrenaline gets the better of you, and you start things that you were speaking loudly or you're now screaming because there's so much adrenaline going on and you're not conscious to it. For people who do it a lot, who've been in front of a lot of people, especially music artists and other people who speak and who do that, they know where they're at, and oftentimes they're very conscious of where the mic is. So that's when you can tell. For me, that's when you tell a pro presenter is someone who really understands where that mic is. And you can see it. Oftentimes, you'll see that they're trained or untrained based on where they put that mic and how they interact with that mic, because they're using that as an instrument. It's not just a thing that captures what they said. It's an instrument that they're playing. And you'll see them pull it away, go towards it, do all these things because they're conscious to it. But that, like any other instrument, takes thousands of hours, or at least tens or hundreds of hours to get good at doing that. And so it's just a matter of practice.
Next question.
Gabriella Chachot-Mestiera and Sault Ste. Marie is asking, Alex, you worked at the DNC. Who were all those people, and what were they all doing behind the DJ last night? What headsets were they using to be on their Zooms for the show?
Go ahead, Alex.
And again, I don't know. You have to send me a link to it. I didn't see any of it. So I think I was making dinner while that was happening. So I don't know what that. I don't have a visual of what you're talking about there. Sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't either, because I didn't see that section. Again, it's been a crazy busy week for me. But if they were behind the DJ, I'm wondering. I don't think they were on Zoom. There was a huge social media contingent as a kind of adjacent to the press pool thing. We talked a little bit about that the other day on the show here, about one of the little hits that one of the bloggers had done with a celebrity. I just think there were a ton of feeds going in and going out of the convention, and they really leaned heavily this year. They're doing a lot more work on social than they ever had before. In fact, I heard that there was a $200 million budget for the social aspects of this campaign. I think that's going to break some records, and we're starting to see the shift that Alex has always talked about, from digital as an afterthought to digital being a primary mode of communication with audiences in the coming future. So welcome to Office Hours, everybody. It's good to have you here. You're going to learn a lot.
Next question.
Breon Smith in Trinidad, West Indies is asking, for $60 US, what do you guys think about this pad versus Elgato Streamdeck and other products of the like? It's called the MACROPAD.
Alexander?
It's too fiddly, and there's no screens on the buttons. Hard pass for me.
Jonas?
I think it really depends what you want. This is what we're talking about, the printed pad. What's interesting is they use switches, and as we were talking in the pre-show, there's all these different ones that you can select: linear, clicky, tactile. So some people really like shortcuts to be like normal keyboard switches. I think it's a neat solution for that. They build a little software that allows you to reprogram it to specific keys and similar things like that. For $60, I think it's pretty neat. I have seen some complaints about, if you zoom in, you see that it's 3D printed, and they might not have used the best 3D printed settings. So you might not get a product that you would expect. But for $60, it's a pretty neat thing. If you are into wanting to use keys, you can write your own things on it and then create hotkeys that way. But like Alexander said, if you want, like for production, I want feedback. And like this has 4 pages as well. I always want to know what I'm pressing. And for us, often the Stream Deck also is a way to see state instead of just pushing something. So that's what this is missing, but it's a neat little product.
And we have a ton of great questions today, so it's a great day if you're in Makana to go ahead and vote on those questions. That way we can focus on what's interesting the audience the most today. And even though we have a lot of great questions, there's always room for more. So if you're watching this later and you want to get that question, remember you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and that's open 24/7 for your questions. We're always happy to have them. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia is asking, I use Hulu Live TV. There is a glitch from at the top of the hour. Why does this happen?
Go ahead, Alex.
Tony, I don't quite track what you're asking there.
Apologies. I should have added that the local channels are glitching. So if I'm watching...
They glitch, but only at the top of the hour?
At the top of the hour every day. So I watch the local news through my Apple TV.
The top of every hour?
The top of every hour. So let's say I'm watching the local news. It's Fox.
And how long does the glitch last?
It's like they're switching from. They'll be like the anchor is talking, and they're saying, well, now this is the 8 o'clock hour. It'll cut off and then it'll repeat. And we're at the 8 o'clock hour. And so it does this at 8, 9, 7, 8, whenever the hour comes, it does that. And it's on all the local channels.
Are you seeing ads when that happens?
No.
No,
I think it's just going from the end of the hour to the beginning of the hour.
I think that what's happening is that it's being delivered to you via HLS, and it's jumping from one stream to another, and you're getting the last segment of you're getting the first segment again. So it's probably that repeat is probably somewhere between 2 and 6 seconds, right? Probably 2 seconds is probably it. Probably goes back 2 seconds, and that's the length of the segment of their HLS stream. So I think that what's happening is that they're, for whatever reason, they're in their process, instead of giving you a continuous live stream, they're considering 1 hour, and for whatever reason, they're switching around. We would see this. So that's what you're talking about, of that repeat, is common so when we do streams of primary and backup in a live stream, we have 2 HLS streams. Now, if we output lock them, which means it's kind of like gen locking for streaming, which can only be done on pretty big hardware encoders. But if we output lock them, they're both sending the same frames. And if we switch over to the backup, you won't see it. It just goes to the next frame. If they're not output locked, it would typically grab it'll just grab the last segment because it didn't quite get to the other one when the switch was made, because it's not precise. And so you get the last segment from that. And what we would used to do to get from one place to another is we do what's called a rock and roll, which is that when we want to move from one thing to the other, we would rock over to the backup and then rock back to the primary. And what the backup was a different feed. So, and if we were output locked, that would happen smoothly. But if we're not output locked, which is, again, I don't know very many encoders outside of like elementals and stuff, like elemental appliances that output lock. So if you do that without that output lock, if they're throwing it from one stream to another, for whatever reason that they're managing things, or that's how they've decided they're going to do it, it would do exactly. I'm not saying that this is what's happening, but I'm saying that the symptom that you're seeing would be exactly what you would see if they were moving from one HLS stream to another HLS stream at the top of every hour. I don't know why they would do that. It's most likely that they don't really have. They don't have the mechanism for live TV, and it's probably not happening with, like, if you watch a movie on Hulu, it probably doesn't happen because that movie is considered one continuous piece. What they don't have is that, my guess is that their facility to manage a live video input into Hulu is still limited. Like, it's still a work in progress. And so it's probably only happening on places where there's a live signal, continuous, and they had to create some kind of, this is how we're going to segment it. I'm curious, it doesn't happen at the bottom of the hour, though, for you. Just the top of the hour. Have you noticed bottom and top?
Well, I'm going to say it's on the hour that it happens.
So you never see it at the bottom of the hour?
No.
Yeah. So I think that I can't tell you what is actually happening, But man, that symptom sounds like they're jumping from one HLS to another.
The funny thing about it is it's just kind of disruptive, to, it's, the echo. I don't want to hear that. Just keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only online service that's really figured out live, TV, for online is YouTube TV. They're by far, it's dramatically better than everybody else. It's not close. I had them all for a little while to test them. It's like, I don't know. It's like Simone Biles competing in a high school gymnastics course. The difference between YouTube Live or YouTube TV and everybody else is not close. So, but it took them some time to figure it out. Like it wasn't like, and so Hulu is still new in the process, I think.
Bill, you have a quick thought?
Yeah, very quickly. Since I produce commercials that go into Hulu used to be kind of a separate thing. They're now part of Disney, so I think there might be some technical wrangling back there. Also, local content is often an insert because it's not going out to the whole network. It's just a part. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a facility producing the local news for that system and injecting it at the top of the hour where they cut away from the main feed and go to the local news stuff. And it's probably at that point where what Alex is talking about makes perfect sense to me in terms of the technical glitch.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania is asking, my Dante audio mixer died. The Yamaha DM3-D is an option, but it's hard to get. I wonder about the LAMA software mixer instead. Thoughts? How big a lift is a software mixer? Is it better?
Jonas?
I would say it really depends on your latency targets for the audio. I think you can probably achieve similar things that you're achieving with a hardware mixer, but you're always going to pick up a little more latency. And then you also need to be able to manage computer and software. If you're, for example, for a church that has volunteers running it, I would probably stick to a hardware mixer where you just don't have the OS exposed to you, because then it's locked down. Your volunteers can't, open up YouTube and watch a YouTube video or do something crazy and download something or download Discord because they needed to transfer a file and then interrupts audio. But it's definitely a way that you can use it that way. So it kind of depends on your use case. If you have local outs, I always like to stay within hardware for that. But if you have remote outs only, you could also try that.
Alexander?
Yeah, I don't know what Dante audio mixer you're using, John, but I'm a proponent of repairing products. A lot of products can be repaired by skilled technicians, so I would find whatever authorized dealer or repair facility you can in your area, if you have one, and maybe get an opinion, get them to assess what exactly it is that actually died. Like, for example, if it doesn't power on, it's going to be the power supply, and power supplies can be easily repaired. So I would look into that, try to get it fixed.
Next question.
Chester Sweeney from Las Vegas, Nevada, from the QR code is asking, how many Bluetooth devices, mice, trackpad, keyboard, etc., can be near one M1 Mac Mini before interference disrupts them all?
Alexander?
I've never put this to the test. You can have a few, but switching between different Bluetooth devices can get a little bit tricky. Logitech makes, I can't remember the model, but they do make a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard where it has little buttons on it, and you can switch. I think you can have up to 4 different computers. Chester, if you really want to put this to the test, go to Amazon, buy 20 of the cheapest Bluetooth keyboards. Try to connect them all and see what happens. I'd like to see.
For what it's worth, Chester, I have 4 trackpads, 3 keyboards, a trackball, and 6 lights, all running in Bluetooth within about 5 feet of 2 Macs right now, and they're both also putting out Bluetooth. And then there's a stack of Mac Minis here, so I think I'm almost at 20, and see very few hiccups. If you are seeing hiccups and you're having trouble controlling a machine, you may want to consider getting one of those 2.4 gigahertz little wireless dongles that plugs into the computer. So it's going to come with the keyboard or the mouse, and then that way you're not worrying about Bluetooth being something that has interference. But for the most part, I've actually been pleasantly surprised at how much Bluetooth I can cram in one room and have everything still know how to talk to one another. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York asks, I would like to see a custom multi-view of my NDI sources. NDI Studio Monitor does let me do 2 sources in PNP, but I'd like 4 or more. What software or hardware would allow this?
Jonas?
There are 3 options I'm going to show you. So if we look at my screen, the first of all is track this multi-view for NDI. I'm going to post all those links in Mukana in a minute. This is one that is relatively new. It's pretty neat because you can control it over the browser. You can also act as a router, so you can get a router destination of each of the boxes that you have. So you route your multi-viewer, and then your switcher automatically follows that. You have PTZ control and NDI output, which that's an important feature for us because we always like to then take that multi-view and bring it into WebRTC. Whole bunch of features there. Pricing-wise, this one is at a subscription of $100 a year right now. Then KiloView is another one that is a little older. We use that. One advantage with KiloView is they allow you to do self-defined layouts. So with the previous one, you're a little more restricted to common multi-view layouts. With this one, you can build whatever you want. So we have built really weird layouts that really made sense for that project, like all the ingests on one side and then all the machines that manage it and then the next one. It's also controllable through a web interface, also outputs NDI. We've had good experiences with both. Lately, the KiloView multi-viewer almost became like a switcher because you can have like a preview and program. And then lastly, the NDI multi-view from BirdDog only works on Mac, so I don't have much experience with it, but it's also an option that you might want to check out.
Next question.
Jesse Kester from Glendale and here on the panel. I'm not looking for 12 songs. I'm looking for albums that are built from the ground up as a single story or concept from start to finish. What do you recommend? About to travel for production, so this is arguably production related.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to take you old school. I think the one, if I had to make one long trip and I had to only take one piece of music, it would certainly be Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. It was seminal. It was unbelievable. You will eventually, through a whole series of musical ideas, be taken to Claire Torrey's unbelievable vocal improvisation on The Great Gig in the Sky. It is one of the finest pieces of recording and finest pieces of human performance I have ever had the privilege to listen to. The whole album is magical. And in fact, most Pink Floyd albums would do that job for you. But Dark Side of the Moon, definitely.
Alex?
See, and I was going to recommend Pink Floyd's The Wall. So
there you go. That's
we're
fine.
two different. We're one generation. We're 10 years different.
Yep.
So there you got
Yep.
10-year different Pink Floyd. Other ones to look at is from that experiential. Maybe Genesis Trick of a Tale, Genesis Duke, both from the 70s. That was really when a lot of people were exploring those things. Another band that because what it feels like what you're really asking for is prog rock, because that's really who kind of thought about those things. But Marillion is another one that might fit into that group as well. And then if you're looking for orchestral stuff, consider Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring, as well as Holst the Planets. I think both of those are great experiences to listen to. I listen to those two when I'm usually sitting and I just want to be away from something. I put on covers on my eyes, but Holst the Planets or Appalachian Spring are two of my favorites.
Yeah, test your sound system when you set it up with Jupiter. It'll blow your hair back.
It is actually Jupiter and Mars are actually two of my big test ones. When I want to push a system, I run those two. But Jupiter's one of my favorite Holst pieces.
Alexander?
Two albums that come to mind, they're more recent. If you like something a little bit heavier, the 2008 Judas Priest album Nostradamus is a whole concept album about him. And then also Bruce Dickinson's, I think it's 1998 album, The Chemical Wedding. So if you're into heavy metal, those two albums are really, really good. And The Chemical Wedding is actually based off of William Blake's poetry. And there's I think there's a couple songs where it's just William Blake poetry and Bruce is singing it.
Go ahead, Jonas.
There's a great musical song-based storytelling concept called Epic the Musical that is a loose adaptation of Homer's Odyssey, and it's just a lot of fun. I'll notice it on TikTok, and now I just listen to it all the time. It's really catchy songs, a little bit more orchestral and musically, but it's really great and tells a whole story.
Guy?
Yeah, it's funny. On my run this morning, I was listening to Robbie Robertson's memoirs. It's a 16-hour audiobook, and I'm on the tail end. And Martin Scorsese directed in 1978, I believe it was. It's called The Last Waltz, and they shot this concert at 35 millimeter film. First time ever anybody's ever done this. So I jumped on YouTube and saw some of the clips, and they recently up-resed it to 4K. So that's on my to-do list to go venture and find the thing on Blu-ray and watch that. So that'd be a cool one to check out. It's 4K. 35 millimeter from 78.
Alex?
We had a bunch of people threw some stuff in. Quadrophenia, also, and this movie too fast. I don't know my mouse there. Harry Nielsen's The Point, Savage Streets, the opera, Rush 2012, Boston, Rush, Enigma. Oh, the Enigma MCMXC that's a really good one. I used to use that for seminars when people walked in. Genesis Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Radiohead in Rainbows. So there's a couple other ones there. One that's a little bit that would be very hard to was very hard to find. I don't even know if it's on streaming right now. That is the idea is a whole lifetime in it is Tony Child's The Woman's Boat. And it is an incredible collection. I just thought about it when we were but it came out probably in the early 90s after her most known one is Union and then House of Hope. But The Woman's Boat is pretty great as a whole story of a lifetime.
And Jesse.
Hey, I was hoping y'all would get me through Arizona. You got me to the East Coast.
Well, I'm going to get you to Nova Scotia. So two more quick ones. Number one, 1983, Billy Joel, An Innocent Man. It is the only happy Billy Joel album, and I guess that was right when his relationship with Christy Brinkley was going well. So I guess he was in a good mood. But it's Billy Joel looking at the music of his childhood and recreating songs in the style of. So it's really neat to hear somebody with the production of the 80s taking a look at the 50s and 60s. And then the other one I'll give you is a really, really deep cut. It's actually a Sinatra album from 1970. It's called Watertown. It was produced and co-written by Bob Gaudio of the Four Seasons. And it's a story. The whole album is a story about love, about loss. It's really heartbreaking. And you've probably never heard any of the songs. It's the only Sinatra album to never chart. But if you like Frank Sinatra's voice and you want to hear him in a totally different setting outside of traditional big band stuff, it's a great one. That's Watertown. Next question.
Neil Avoletto in Boca Raton, Florida is asking, any opinion on StreamYard? Seen new reporters in YouTube using it and all this with the same super sources and themes all look the same.
Alex?
Yes, it all looks the same. It's easy. So by constraining the number of things you can do, it makes it easier for people to throw it together. But the downside of that is that you look like a lot of other folks. I think since the ownership has changed with StreamYard, I have a lot of friends that use StreamYard, and the pushback is starting. So a lot of people are getting pretty frustrated there. So anyway, so I think that's the only the challenge that they have is they've kind of changed. They're starting to change some of their business models and so on and so forth that have kind of riled up a lot of their core users. So it'll be interesting to see, but it is very easy, an easy way to get on. I think that there's a lot of other folks that will probably be coming out in the fall that are coming out of beta and alpha that might be a competitor to these things. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll probably bring them on once it's ready.
Jonas?
I was gonna say, it's a feature, but also a problem, right? That everything looks the same, that it has kind of the StreamYard look. It's interesting. There's always these kind of innovations, like when WordPress become really big, suddenly everything looked like a WordPress website, and like you could spot it pretty easily. And they added more customization, and people built stuff on top of it and all that. But with StreamYard, with how close it is, I think that won't happen. You can do cool stuff with it, but also if you want to look into stuff that looks more custom and actually do your work yourself, look at what IRL Twitch streamers do. It's amazing what infrastructure has been built around that for people wanting to be a one-person broadcast. There's like whole bonding solution. There's whole like graphic solution, everything. So you can just go live with your phone and have a great show with it. So that's what I would do.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, Ubiquiti has introduced NETGEAR-like port profiles in their UniFi switches. Guy, have you had any experience with them?
Go ahead, Guy.
Unfortunately, I don't have a dual environment to be able to test this. Here's what it looks like, though. The switches there's only the newer ones, which I only have one of the 24-port enterprise ones that has this, which will give you this Pro AV. And this is early access release. This is still not even beta, it's early access. And so the profile looks like this. You would click Pro AV, you would click NDI, and then that allows IGMP snooping and a few other tricks that some of the people like at NETGEAR have created these profiles that are distinct, where you have all these settings that flip on all at once. So it's still in beta. I do have a friend that just this morning posted in the NDI group that he's been using the alpha for a couple weeks, and he said it's solid. But my switch, unfortunately, is a production one, so I'd need to buy a whole nother one just for beta testing, because I have clients on that switch and I can't mess with it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe a GoFundMe so that I can go buy another switch and beta test for you, Douglas. I don't have one, though.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gabriela Shesho-Mistiera and Susei Marie is asking, how did the rings at the Olympics closing show work? They didn't have the same inside structures, and some weren't the same on both sides. How did they get them up in the air and keep them together when they are so heavy?
Go ahead, Alex.
Magic. I'm pretty sure. I think it was a levitating Levioso, I think is the process that you have.
Wingardium Levioso.
Yeah, Wingardium Levioso. I think that there was someone back there, was back there doing it. I actually don't know. I haven't still. Again, when you post these, try to give us a URL so I can see what you're talking about. I didn't watch a lot of that either. I watched a lot of the Olympics. I didn't. As you may have guessed, I don't watch a lot of end caps of things. I just look for the protein. so I didn't see any of the pomp and circumstance around the Olympics other than the sports.
Jonas?
That stadium has a lot of rigging in place above the crowd, and it has a roof that goes pretty out. So you could probably just mount it to the roof and then hang it from the top there. And then, yeah, it's magic. The rest is just magic. I was just looking through my images, and I sadly had only this view of the closing ceremony and not the view with.
That was your view. That was your view of the closing ceremony from your hotel room.
Yeah, that was from my hotel room. So not that bad, but I sadly don't know about the rings. But there's a lot of rigging there, and they probably just added it to that.
Bill?
Yeah, track and winch. All those speaker arrays and everything else have to be winched up. In fact, they're lowered to be worked on and then winched up, and they have huge lifts. It's the same thing that they attach to people when they fly in, like we saw with the Tom Cruise thing at the Olympics. But those heavy duty, quiet and very smooth winches were undoubtedly involved in getting those things off the floor. More than likely, the dancers were schooled in how to connect quietly and in a stealth mode cables to it at the point right before it was winched up.
Next question.
This one's for me. How does phase detect autofocus work?
Jonas?
It's actually pretty interesting. So if we look at how a camera is built, this is a DSLR. So you have, this is your focus point. You have your Prisma up here that allows you to look through the little searcher eyepiece, and then it's an actual 2 additional sensors, or most modern cameras have a lot more there, but let's just for now say it's 2. The main mirror that is reflecting it up into your eyepiece is actually a little bit transparent. So it allows you to grab a little bit of that light and also bring it into here. And then what's really interesting is if I switch to this image, we have the readout of those 2 sensors. So if you take a guess which one of those are in focus and which aren't, you might guess 2 is the one that is in focus, because at that point, both of those have the same input. So the really cool thing with this compared to contrast-based autofocus is that it knows into what direction it has to go to make it sharper or less sharp. So you have less of the hunting, and since you already know what direction you need to go, this phase detect autofocus system then can tell the lens, hey, you need to like move it there, instead of needing to try it and change the focus. This can just read it out. That's why it's a lot faster, a lot more reliable. And I'll post an article about that in Mukana.
If anybody was 1 or 2 college credits short of getting your degree, I think you just got it. Go ahead, Jesse.
How many times have I heard phase detect autofocus and thought it was face detect autofocus?
No kidding. Wow. Sorry. I'm just blown away. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. The new Sony ZV-E10 II comes with the EPZ 16 to 50 millimeter f3.5 to 5.6 OSS II lens for $1,098. What is the most cost-effective lens to supplement this for doing Zoom meetings using an LED screen as a backdrop in as small of a place as practical, or is this lens okay?
Alex?
The lens is okay. It'll give you some flexibility, but you're going to get more bang for your buck from a fixed lens where you can get a wider aperture to kind of, depending on what you want to use it for. Now, you can fake some of those things, but the problem really is if your aperture is too closed, you'll start to see moire patterns across the monitor. So you do want to shorten that so that you can blur that out a little bit. And so my recommendation is, what I'm using with that ZV-E10, my wife's version of that she uses for her setup is a 35 millimeter. It's the F series, I think, the 35 millimeter from Sony that is a 1.8, and it works really well. It's not super expensive, and will work with the EV10 really nicely.
And the other thing I'll throw in for cost effective is take a look at the Sigma stuff. It's not going to be quite as fast of autofocus as Sony is, and some folks will, in the shootouts, will kind of nitpick about the different levels of sharpness. But I've bought a Sigma with this camera, and I'm on it now, and I've been pretty happy with it. The other thing to keep in mind is if you feel in your head like, oh, I don't have to go to 1.4 or 1.8, I don't need it to be that blurry because of my distance, keep in mind that lens is going to be sharper, not all the way at the edge of the aperture. So if you have a 1.8 lens, but you're only going to take it to 2.8, it'll be sharper at 2.8 than a lens that is 2.8 all the way open, if that makes sense. Next question.
Next question is from Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I traded in the ZV-E1 for the FX3 because of overheating, but I missed the quality of live stream video. Which non-overheating Sony would you recommend?
Alexander?
Well, I think you did the right thing there. The problem with a lot of cameras is, like you discovered here, they don't have fans. They're not designed for long-term recording, where the FX or Cine line from Sony do, and of course other brands that make cinema cameras do have cooling solutions. So basically they can stand the test of time in varying degrees of temperatures. A lot of these cameras will have settings where you can go into and set like a threshold, upper threshold that's a little bit higher so that it will last longer without overheating. So those are all things to look for there. The problem with, and I was actually quite disappointed. I looked at a lot of the reviews for the ZV-E10 Mark II, and Gerald Undone did a great video of it, and he didn't I don't think he was testing the HDMI out, but just the internal recording. The odd thing I found was that even in a controlled studio environment with very comfortable temperatures, that camera kept on overheating. So it's not a camera that I would necessarily recommend. I would probably, if you can, go with, I mean, the FX3 is a lot more money, but the FX30 would be a good step up.
Go to Alex.
Well, it does look like Francis has a FX3 right now, and I'm curious as to when you said it's not good at streaming. Are you talking about internal streaming from the camera or the HDMI output? Because I think the HDMI output works just fine from the FX3, I believe. And so I think that's what you're using, CJ, right? You have an FX3 and you leave it on a lot, so it's not
for days sometimes by accident. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that the FX3 is still a full frame sensor. So so you have the full frame sensor. It's not overheating. So I'm not sure now. We'll tell you on the Sonys, on the EV10 and I think the FX3, there is I don't know what it is, but there's a setting you can turn it to where it looks really pixelated coming out of the HDMI, and I don't know what that setting is.
If you leave it in photo mode by accident,
photo mode, yeah, that's
if it's in still picture mode, and then it looks horrendous, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then if you get the Creators app for your phone, you can actually change a bunch of camera settings, including the camera mode, right from your mobile device, change it to video mode. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, so that might be what you're running into there, because I know that with the E10 we had with my wife, so I had this problem where it got turned off and turned back on and got into photo mode, and it was like it's all pixelated. So that may be what you're running into there. I think the FX3. I mean, I have an FX30. I'm pretty happy with it. If I had the spare money right now, I'm saving up for the next phone. so if I had the spare money, I'd probably get an FX3. That'd be the one that I would recommend typically for a webcam. Now, from production perspective, on a sub $10,000 production camera, I would probably right now, given any choice, I'd probably pick the FX6. The FX6, we use that a lot. So we use a mixture of, when I do a lot of shows, I use a lot of FR7s and FX6s. The FX6s are the camera operated in the FX7s, and they both have the same sensor, so they both cut together and color well together. So we use those, and again, in the sub $10,000 range, those are my favorite right now because of the autofocus, because of the full frame sensor. It's kind of the whole package there. It's a really nice camera.
The other thing to look at for the FX3 is update the firmware, because as Sony has been releasing newer firmwares for the FX3, they're adding things like, I just tried to switch to photo mode now to show you a demo of what the delta is between the two, and the quality didn't get all blocky. So they may have fixed that in a firmware update. So if you're having quality issues, that's the other thing that I would double check. Make sure that your firmware is on the latest version.
And Mickey suggests the Venice. I feel like if you're going to go with a Venice, you might as well just go with the Venice 2. That'd be the ultimate flex, is going, I'm using a Venice for my web camera. I think that would be awesome. So anyway, someday.
Next question.
Jeff Vealey in Henderson, Texas is asking, is it possible to run 2 instances of Keynote on Mac and connect both simultaneously as sources in OBS?
Go ahead, Bill.
This confused me because I run one instance. I can definitely pull up, and I have pulled up another instance of Keynote, but one is on my iPad Pro and one is on my laptop. So running 2 simultaneously is in my head, but I'm not sure if you can run 2 simultaneously on your laptop, and it has to do with the routing path out of it to get 2 separate feeds and not have any conflict with 2 versions of Keynote running under one operating system on one machine. I have never tried that, so maybe Jesse or Alex knows more.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I would absolutely not do this. You're running OBS on a Mac. I would not even bother trying to figure out if this was a possible workflow. The cheapest Apple anything, iPhone, iPad, Mac Mini, Air can run Keynote just fine, and I would run a second instance of Keynote out of a discrete device.
Alex, what say you in your stack of Mac Minis?
Use a separate computer. So, I wouldn't even run OBS on a Mac, but I would definitely not try to overdrive that Mac with 2 Keynotes and an OBS. That's a recipe for disaster.
Next question.
Next one's from Tony Mobley from Noonan, Georgia, and here in the panel. Alex, if I move to YouTube TV, should I just add the Disney Plus Hulu as an add-on?
Alex?
Yeah, I have YouTube TV and Disney Plus. That's, and Apple TV and Netflix and Max. Those are the only ones. I stopped at that point. I was like, okay, we're done. And so I haven't seen Peacock or Paramount or other ones like that, but those are the ones that I subscribe to. And Coda. I subscribe to Coda because I love documentaries about bands. so it's $4 a month, and I get Prime because it comes with Prime. Like I don't think of that as a subscription because it's already part of the fact that I get things every day from Amazon.
Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Gabriella Chachot-Mestier and Susay Marie is asking, looking for your opinion on the different HDMI cable signal amplifiers for longer runs. We are looking at the Legrand C2G 4K inline extender to get to the back of the class or for our theater shows. Thoughts?
Jonas?
So when I pulled up that device, at least in Germany, they're saying you can extend it with this. You can extend it up to 5 meters. I'm guessing that's not the length that you're going for. I would look for a conversion instead of extension, especially the one that you sent seems to be a 4K 60 model. That's a format that's going to be pretty hard to extend over HDMI. This is often sometimes where you look into fiber or over Ethernet conversion, especially if you don't worry too much of a couple frames of latency. That's what I would do. If it's in a university and you have a little more budget, HD-based T is what often gets used. There are some Crestron AV over IP, but also just like 2 Blackmagic HDMI to fiber and back converters, and a fiber spool could also do the job.
Guy?
Yeah, Jonas summed it up pretty well. The house of worship that I'm at, we convert. You'll need something like an HD-based T extender. The one that I just looked at that you linked to is this one. It's 84 feet, and I just wouldn't trust something that looks this dinky. If you really just want to cheap out, you could just go with HDMI fiber cables. Make sure that when you run them, that there's one end says source, the other says destination. Make sure you get those the right way, or you'll be running them again. But the proper way to do this is either going to be HD-based T or convert to HD SDI, because anything over, and even then you're only going to get about 300 feet. So you got to be careful. You measure, and don't forget that you're running along usually the floor, and then you're going up, or you're running along the ceiling and you're going down. Don't forget that extra distance to get to your device in a rack or propped up on a mount somewhere. So measure both sides. Don't just measure the physical distance from point to point. It's the up and down that'll get you as well. So that 84 feet is very tiny if you're going to use that adapter.
Alex?
Yeah, I wouldn't normally get any kind of. I would get something that's going to convert it, as everyone else said, to SDI or to fiber. So anything more than 150 feet, I'm going to convert to optical. So I'm going to go to fiber there. Yellow Brick is my favorite version of those types of tools. They make the best ones. They're also very expensive, I used to have a box full of them of how to get from one place to the other. But there's plenty of them. You can convert to SDI as well. So you can go to 12G SDI. Just remember that 12G SDI is going to require a much better SDI cable. So, you have to make sure you have 12G cable that's going to go that far. A lot of 12G cable, even if they say 12G cable, you have to test it because you get to 100 feet and a lot of them aren't really 12G that you're buying on Amazon or something like that. So make sure that you're really getting a 12G cable, and you could do SDI up to about as 12G SDI up to about 120, 130 feet. 150 feet would be a little bit long for that. But after that, you want to convert to optical. And I would recommend optical in general just because it takes a lot of thinking out of the process of length.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, Matterport limits your scans to a few, so what format can you use to export your Matterport scans to 3DS, SKP, IGS, 3DM, CG, Panorama, OBJ, DXF, E57, BIM, FBX, STL, STEP, USDZ, or other?
Alex?
Mostly what we've taken out of the Matterport is the OBJ export, because when I was using a lot of Matterport work, I used to own the hardware Matterport, not the software one. USDZ is also something that we will pull it out of. An E57 is probably the most, it's all the data that it has. I mean, I don't think the Matterport really captures a ton of data, even in the app or whatever. It's nothing like a real scanner, but it does a good enough job. So if you're exporting those out, but I would really recommend, it does help to have that subscription. So if you're really using a Matterport, I would really think about I think it's a yearly subscription. I don't remember what it is. It's not incredibly high. But I would consider that, because it does let you keep them. I think the big thing you're going to lose is you start to export those out of the Matterport are the tours, and that's the only value that the Matterport has. Like if you're not gonna build the tours with Matterport, you can just use Polycam. The quality will be the same roughly, but what Matterport really does is it lets you build these great tours of a location in a way that is really easy to walk around and get ideas.
That's a wrap on our Q&A show for today. Wanted to thank everyone for coming in today and asking all the great questions. Thank you to the panelists for being here. No one of us is as smart as all of us, and man, did we have a lot of smarts on the panel today. It's amazing. A group gets together every day just to freely share all this wonderful life experience. Truly fortunate. Also fortunate for the back-end crew who wakes up early, stays up late all around the world. There's a small village that lights up 7 days a week to make sure we haven't missed a show since March 25th, 2020, which is pretty darn impressive. Also, thanks to all the folks on the back end who are making sure that we can use the software that runs the show. We can organize all the shows, organize second hours. All that happens because people volunteer. And if you're interested in volunteering, we do have the volunteer meeting this Saturday. It's going to be at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern. So that's tomorrow. If you're interested, or if you're in the volunteer community, just a reminder that that's the Saturday meeting. Finally, thanks to all the producers. We run on your questions, but also we're a donation-supported show. So if you like what you're seeing and you want to see more, want to say thank you, consider supporting us at officehours.global/donate. The Tlaloc Traversal today, 31,000 miles, that's 50,000 kilometers and 244 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in After Hours.
Hey, is that the new set? Is that your new set, CJ?
This is.
Wow, it looks really good.
It was a lot of work, but
yeah.
I thought I was going to, get off with a bang. I ended up getting off with a beep.
Well, thank goodness it wasn't the bang. We just
sported. I'll have headphones on.
I thought that, it was like, that's a new countdown beep to the top of the hour. That's neat. That's interesting. I missed that note. And then it kept going, and I said, "Is somebody punking me?"
Queued up some.
I was like, he's doing really well. He's got something going off in his space, and he's just talking. You were distracted.
Good focus.
I didn't know that it was in my room though, because of my ears being in. I was like, oh boy.
And I thought it's what you actually hear in your in-ears to cue you how long you can speak, because you ended so perfectly as it ended. I'm like, that's an aggressive way to make sure you're on time.
No, it looks good. I like it. I think it's. I've been thinking about turning to the corner. I keep on every time I see a corner shot. I'm like, I gotta think about.
I'm still futzing with the lights a little bit, but so far so good.
Touch